What if a small group of islands and waterways could decide the future of global trade, security, and even your daily life? The South China Sea may look like just another stretch of water on the map, but it has become one of the most contested regions on Earth. Here, the Philippines, China, and other nations clash over territory, resources, and influence. At the heart of this struggle lies Scarborough Shoal, a name now synonymous with high-stakes maritime confrontations. The question is not only about who controls these waters, but what that control means for the rest of the world. In the Indo-Pacific, every move made in the South China Sea sends ripples across economies, alliances, and global power. For ordinary people, this is not an abstract chess game. It is the difference between stability and uncertainty, peace and disruption. For leaders across the globe, it is the front line of a test. Can international law still hold strong, or will might always make right? Recently, one of the most dramatic standoffs unfolded at Scarborough Shoal. A lone Philippine Navy vessel found itself surrounded by 22 Chinese ships inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The confrontation, now widely discussed as the 22 versus 1 incident, highlighted the overwhelming numerical advantage Beijing commands at sea, yet it also showed the resolve of Manila, which refused to back down despite the imbalance. For Filipinos, this was not just about a single ship. It symbolized the nation's determination to safeguard sovereignty, no matter the odds. For the international community, it underscored how quickly tensions here can escalate. Imagine being on that lone vessel, outnumbered, outgunned, but refusing to retreat. That courage speaks louder than any speech or press release. In many ways, that moment captured the entire struggle of the Philippines, small in size but unshaken in spirit. This was not the first time Scarborough Shoal became a flashpoint. Back in 2012, a Philippine attempt to enforce its maritime rights met with a massive Chinese flotilla. The standoff dragged on until Manila eventually withdrew, while Beijing solidified its presence. That withdrawal reshaped the status quo, showing how sustained presence, not a single battle, can decide outcomes at sea. Years later, every new confrontation still draws from that precedent. It was proof that once ground is ceded, regaining it becomes almost impossible without broader support. For many Filipinos, the memory of 2012 is not just history, it is a lesson carved in saltwater and steel. And it explains why every new clash at Scarborough feels like more than a fight over rocks. It is a fight to never repeat that mistake again. Adding fuel to the fire is China's controversial 10-dash line revealed in 2023. This sweeping claim overlaps with the exclusive economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and more. Cartography here is not just drawing lines on paper, it is a political weapon. By publishing maps, Beijing provides justification for its Coast Guard, Navy, and maritime militia to expand operations. Each incursion reinforces the idea that control is reality, regardless of international law. And for countries like the Philippines, this poses an existential challenge to rights that are legally indisputable. These maps may look harmless in textbooks or news reports, but for fishermen and naval officers, they are lines that choke livelihoods and endanger lives. The economic impact extends well beyond coastal villages. The South China Sea carries 1/3 of global maritime trade, making it one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Any disruption here could spike energy prices, delay electronics exports, and slow supply chains worldwide. Analysts warn that even a limited blockade could cut the Philippines' GDP by at least 2.5%. For investors, insurers, and industries, the risks are already factored into decision-making, and for global markets, the stakes could not be higher. When a container ship leaves Manila, Ho Chi Minh, or Singapore, its safe passage depends on peace in these waters. That is why the South China Sea is not just Asia's problem, it is everyone's problem. For ordinary families, the effects could be felt in rising fuel costs, more expensive groceries, and delayed deliveries of everyday goods. A conflict thousands of miles away could suddenly hit household budgets, proving that global trade routes are as connected to daily life as local markets. This is the hidden truth of the South China Sea. Its tides carry not just ships and cargo, but the economic hopes of billions. When the waters are stable, prosperity flows. When they are threatened, the ripple turns into a wave that spares no shore. Faced with mounting pressure, the Philippines has not stood idle. Diplomatic protests are filed almost weekly, each meticulously documented and released to the public. Allies like the US, Japan, and Australia have voiced support, framing the dispute as a test of the rules-based order. Joint patrols and military exercises have expanded, signaling that Manila is not isolated. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has drawn clear red lines, vowing that sovereignty is non-negotiable. For Filipinos, this assertive stance is both reassurance and rallying call. The shift from quiet diplomacy to open defiance reflects a deeper change in national spirit, a refusal to be pushed aside. Every protest, every patrol, and every partnership says the same thing: we are not backing down. But Manila's response is not just about politics, it is about dignity. For fishermen, soldiers, and ordinary citizens, seeing their government stand firm provides a sense of pride that their struggles are not ignored. It transforms fear into resilience and anxiety into solidarity. This is where the Philippines' strength lies, not in the size of its navy or economy, but in the unity of its people. When sovereignty is international law speaks volumes on this issue. In 2016, the Hague Tribunal sided with the Philippines, dismissing China's expansive claims. That ruling, under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, confirmed Manila's rights over Scarborough Shoal and other vital areas. But rulings are meaningless without enforcement. China brushed off the decision and continued its operations as if nothing had changed. This highlights the stark contrast between legal principles and the overwhelming force of maritime power. For smaller nations, this is a harsh truth. Having the law on your side doesn't ensure safety. The chasm between justice and enforcement breeds fear, frustration, and defiance. Beyond the headlines, real lives are impacted by this conflict every day. Filipino fishermen endure blockades, water cannon attacks, and dwindling access to their traditional fishing grounds. Their livelihoods are at stake, catches diminish, and many are compelled to undertake riskier, longer journeys. This leads to inflated prices in local markets and increasing threats to food security. For these communities, Scarborough is not just a symbol, it represents survival. Every lost fishing trip narrates a broader tale of how everyday lives are influenced by maritime politics. To grasp the South China Sea situation, just listen to a fisherman whose boat was attacked, whose nets were destroyed, and whose family faces hunger. What happens in Scarborough does not stay in Scarborough. Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia all face overlapping challenges in their waters. Each watches closely to see how the Philippines defends its rights and whether the global community responds. Because if one nation's exclusive economic zone can be disregarded, so can others. This makes the dispute not just bilateral, but regional with cascading effects. The credibility of maritime law is truly on the line, and if the rules collapse in Asia's waters, they could collapse elsewhere too, from the Arctic to the Mediterranean. This is why even faraway nations weigh in, because the defense of law anywhere protects the stability of law everywhere. For smaller nations, the stakes are deeply personal. Their economies depend on fisheries, shipping lanes, and oil exploration rights that could vanish overnight if larger powers rewrite the rules unchecked. Scarborough is more than a reef. It's a warning flare that reminds the world of what's at risk when might is allowed to overrule right. This is why solidarity matters. Each regional nation that speaks up and each international partner that offers support strengthens the principle that no nation, at first glance, the South China Sea might seem distant, but it's closer than you think. Every smartphone, every shipment, every product is linked to these waters. The Philippines' struggle is about more than geography. It's about trade, security, and democracy. The real question is whether international law can prevail over expansion. If rules are ignored here, they can be ignored anywhere. Scarborough Shoal is about safeguarding a global order for stability and fairness. Think of the world as a shared ship. The South China Sea is a busy corridor. If one passage becomes lawless, humanity's voyage is at risk. This is about protecting trust, not just shipping routes. Every agreement depends on the belief that commitments will be respected. If rules collapse at sea, they can collapse everywhere, eroding cooperation. For ordinary people, this struggle means stable prices and secure jobs. A secure South China Sea ensures predictable living costs and timely goods. Ultimately, Scarborough tests if international rules can outlast power. It measures our commitment to justice and the livelihoods of ordinary people. What happens here will ripple across oceans and generations. Silence and inaction have consequences. So does solidarity. If we defend rules, we protect trust, opportunity, and security for billions. The story of Scarborough isn't finished. The world still has a choice. Stand with law. Stand with the communities who depend on these waters.